audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
How you doing, man? How are you? I'm well.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight: why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the
election's
100
already
million
started.
people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to
Let-
socialist.
go
You're
ahead.
going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number
White.
one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Number
And
one,
we increase it.
We do not
He
wipe
knows
any.
that,
And
what
one
I
of the big
proposed.
debates we had
What I
with
proposed
23
is that,
of my
we
colleagues
expand
trying to win the
Obamacare.
Go ahead,
nomination
Vice
that I
President.
won.
We increase
saying
it.
that
We do not
Biden
wipe
knows
any-
that
allow
one
people
of
to
the
have
big
private
debates we had
insurance.
with
What I
proposed 23 is that
of
they do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what
that
your
is-
party has said.
that is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party
That is
wants to
simple.
go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
Right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing conditions?
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And
this.
if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe, which
no,
was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President,
You're talking about 2 million people.
You're
Mr.
not gonna be able to
President, as
shut
a
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's
begun.
on the ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is
you
it on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And you
just be
don't
quiet
know
for a
her
minute?
view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right, let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they
Let me-
want to
if I-
give
if I-
good
if I-
health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well, I'll
I
give
got
you an
rid of the
and when
individual
I finish,
mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse
opportunity.
me. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part
didn't
of
ask you,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part
me.
of Obamacare.
Let me ask my
Well,
question.
I'll ask Joe. The
no,
individual mandate was the most unpopular
Mr. Vice Pre-
aspect of
Mr.
Obamacare. I
President,
got rid of it.
I'd like
and
you
we
to,
will protect
Mr.
people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
Go ahead.
question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the
pre-existing
things that
conditions?
we've done,
He has not cut
insulin. I
healthcare.
give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water. You want to know the truth? So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big.
you'll
This
be
is
happy,
big stuff.
sir. You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your
when in
points.
They pay just
to
a
ask
tiny
the Vice
fraction.
President,
This is
which is
open
he
discussion.
points
No, but
out
this is
that
big.
you would like
This-
to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well, if I
sorry.
can ask you the question, it will
Not what
end
your party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option, number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's
I
far
did-
left, on the manifesto,
Well,
we
you-
call it.
well,
And that
manifest-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you
I'm
saying
not
you
going to
didn't
listen to
agree?
him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not by
here
much.
standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2
I
days
tell
early.
you,
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do
Super
is hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to
With
make
what?
sure because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree-
want to
Hey,
make
wait,
sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
You pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy,
Talk,
the wrong
Joe,
night at
go.
the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let
Now
him-
you're disavowing it.
There is no manifesto, number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan
Folks,
that's absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you have
to,
any
and under that
idea
plan,
what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Medicare.
Do you have any
President.
do?
Socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I
President,
tell you what, he is not for any
聞いてください。
help
サンダースと同じ意見だって言ったじゃないですか。
Because his,
ま
because
ずト
he
ラン
in
プにはマニフェストす
fact
らありま
already
せ
has
ん。
cost
そして
10
2
million
つ目。
people their health care that
あ
they
なたは
had from their
左翼に
employers
負けたんで
because
す。
of his
左翼
recession.
の言いなりになって
Number
るん
one.
です。
Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever
バイデン氏に
deny
任
and
せ
say
てく
that's
だ
what
さ
he
い。言わ
wants
せ
to
てく
do.
ださい。
Take it
彼
away.
I
は
want to give them
Number
better
three.
health care
人々
at a
の
much
助
lower
けに
price
なりま
because
せん。特にヘル
Obamacare
ケア
is
に
no
こ
good.
He
と
doesn't
で
know
は
how to do
そう
that.
です。
He has never
すでに
offered
彼
a
は
Fixed it
plan.
to an extent.
He has
Obamacare,
never done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time, let the president.
そ
Go
して
ahead,
ま
sir.
たオバマケア
Obamacare
で
is no good.
保
We made
険
it
を
better.
せっ
And
か
I
く
had a
入れ
choice
た
to
人
make
々から
very
それを
early
奪おう
on.
と
We
してい
took
ます。
away the individual
彼がやりたい
mandate.
こと
We
ははっ
guaranteed
きりしてい
pre-existing
ます。
conditions.
取り上げ
We
よう
took
とし
away
て
the
いません。
individual
よく
mandate.
有料利用で安くしようとしただけです。ちなみにそのやり方すらわからない人た
That,
ちは
they
すで
shouldn't
に
even call it Obamacare. Then I had a
悪いところ
choice
の
to
その
make.
人
Do I
は
let my people
何
run
も
it
成し
really
遂げたこ
well
とのない人です。
or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me.
ま
But
ず
more
大統
importantly, I
領
want
から
to
どう
help
ぞ。
people.
オバマケアはよくあり
I
ま
said,
せ
you
ん。
got to
いろ
run
いろ
it so
よ
well.
くしたんです。
And I just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive, premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it.
オバマケアなど有料
It's
利
open
用は
discussion. I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please
Badly, they'll
let
probably
the Vice
blame
President talk.
me, but more importantly, I want
彼
He
を
has no
のせい
plan
で
for
しょう。私の
health
せいじゃありま
care.
せん。
Sends
And I
Please.
just had a
He
meeting
sends
with them. They
out
said the
Mike,
problem
Wishful
wishful
is no matter
thinking.
how
He
well
has
you
executive
run
orders that have
Obamacare,
no
it's
power.
a disaster.
He hasn't
オバマ
lowered
ケアは
drug
どんなに
costs for
うまくやった
anybody.
と
He's
しても
promising a
最悪な
health
んで
care
す。
plan
保険
since
料
he
はあま
got
りまた
elected.
かつき
He
ます。
has not. Like almost everything else he talks about. He does
分かって
not
ます
have
分
a
かってま
plan.
すけれど
He
も
doesn't have a plan.
両者
The
平等の
fact
時
is,
間を
this
提
man
供しなけ
doesn't
ればい
know
けま
what
せ
he's
ん。バイデン
talking
さんどうぞ
about.
All right,
He's
I have
against
one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans,
彼は単
we
なる
were talking
妄想です
originally about the
そ
Supreme
して
Court here.
大
If
統
Senate
領にはそういった
Republicans
権
go
限が
ahead
ありません。
and
ヘル
confirm
スケア
Justice
を
Barrett,
プランすると当
there
選の
has been
時から言っ
talk
てきますけ
about
れど
ending
も
the filibuster
決してそん
or
なもの
even
はで
packing
き
the
てき
court,
ていません。
adding
な
to
ぜ
the
かという
nine
と計画を持
justices
っていな
there.
いからで
You
す。
call
そ
this
し
a
て
distraction
こ
by
の
the
男性
president,
は
but in
自
fact
分
it
の話
wasn't
している
brought
こ
up
と
by
が
the
何の話な
president.
のかも分
It
かっ
was
てい
brought
ま
up
せん。
by some of your
です。よろしい
Democratic
ですか。
colleagues
バイデンさ
in
ん。
I'm
the
saying,
Congress. So my question to you is you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the
whatever
court?
position I take in that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and
しかし、
vote.
大統領は
You're
目
in
をそらす
voting
と
now.
おっしゃっておりますけ
Vote
れど
and
も、
let your
そうではないかも
senators
しれま
know
せん。
how
大
you
統領でありま
really
せん。
feel.
民主党の同僚も言っておりますけれども、
Make
君の
sure
話で
you,
決
in
めるという
fact,
ことでありま
let
す。
people know you're
あなた
senators.
は
I'm
そ
not
うで
going
す
to
ね、
answer
ア
the
メリカの
question
国民に
again
対しまして
because
こ
the
れを
question
あな
is,
た
the
が
question
議
is,
会をやめると
Would you
約
shut
束され
up,
ますか
man?
どうなんでしょうか。
list, Joe?
The
issue is
この
so
問
right.
題はアメリカ人の
This
意
is
見
so
を
unprecedented.
Pack the court.
We have
そのために
ended,
投票してもらうということで、
this
ぜ
segment. We're
ひ
going to move on to
投
the
票
second
して
segment.
上院議員に自分の考えを伝えてください。今投票してください。そして自分の声を上院議員に届けてください。
Nothing. They understand.
問題は
The second
問題は
subject is COVID-19. It is an awfully serious
黙ってくれ
subject.
ませんか、ちょっと。
Let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything
2番目のテー
approaching
マは
normal.
コロナウイルスで
My
す。
question for
非常
both of
に
you
重要
is
なテーマ
based
であり
on
ま
what
すの
you
で、
have
深
said
刻に
and
受け取
done
りましょ
so
う。
far and
700
what
万
you
人以
have
上
said you
の
would
人
do
たち
starting
がア
in
メリカでは感染をいたしました。
2021.
そ
Why
して
should the
10万人
American
以上の人
people
がもうアメ
trust
リカで
you
亡くなり
more
ました。コロナウイ
than
ルスで。
your opponent
私たちが
to deal
ワク
with
チン
this
を作った後で
public
も
health
専門家
crisis
により
going
ますと
forward?
何ヶ
In this
月
case,
何年かかるかも
the
しれないと
question
言っておりま
goes
す。
to you first,
すなわ
sir.
ち
2
正常に
minutes
戻るまではと
uninterrupted.
かかると
Good luck.
専門家も言っております。で、どちらにもご質問したいんですけれども、今までおっしゃったことを踏まえて、やったことを踏ま
We
え
in
て、
fact
そして
have
やると言ったことを2021年にやると言ったことを踏まえて、アメリカの国民はあなたを信じて敵側を信じない理由はどこにあるんでしょうか。
In addition to
衛生の
that,
危機が
about
続
between
いているのに、
750 and
ま
1,000
ず
people a day are dying.
あなたから
When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what
す
it
で
is
に
because you
20
are
万
who
人
you
が
are.
亡くなり、そして
That's why it
700万人以
is.
上がす
The
でにアメリ
president
カだけで
has
感染してい
no
ます。
plan.
そ
He
してま
hasn't
た
laid out anything.
私たち
He
人口では
knew
世界
all
の
the way back in
4%、
February how serious this
けれど
crisis
死亡
was.
者において
He
は
knew
2
it
割
was
で
a
す。
deadly
そして
disease.
日々何
What
千
did he
人もが
do?
感染している。
He's on tape
そ
as
してまた
acknowledging he knew. He said he didn't tell us or
毎
give people
日
a
何
warning
千人も
of
が
it
死ん
because
で
he
い
didn't
ま
want
す。
to
そし
panic
て
the
これが
Americans.
現状なんだから仕方ないと大統領は言いました。けれどもそれは今の大統領がこうだからです。大統領は計画を持っていないんです。何も計画を示していません。2月の時点でこの問題の深刻度を知っていたのです。そして致死性のある病気だということを知っていました。それは録音に残っています。そしてそれを国民に伝えなかったというと、なぜかというとパニックを起こさせたくなかったということです。パニックを起こすのは国民ではなく大統領であったのです。そしてまた 中国の人々がウーハンに行ってその危険性について調べるべきだと言いました。そして彼はそれを調べに行かせた人に関して素晴らしい仕事をしていると言いました。けれどもその時にどんな情報が得られたか、ずっと待ってるだけでした。そしてずっと待ったのに計画を出してきませんでした。計画を作ること自体が必要です。私は3月からそしてまた7月にもう一度計画を練り直しました。 PPE などを準備する。そしてまた会員を可決させて人々に必要なビジネスを再開し、また学校を再開させるために必要な資金を提供しようとしました。けれどもゴルフコースのバンカーにはまっているかのようにそこ から出てこないで、秘密で仕事をすることもしませんでした。それができていたら知らなくて済んだ人がたくさんいるんです。
2分ですよ。
If you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic, he's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think we should have closed our country. Wait a minute. You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governors. Oh, really? Go take a look. Your governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns, we got the masks, we made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press, they give me bad press, because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job.
Well, you didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief executive said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not
マスコミで言われていることはみんなフェイクニュースです。あなたのことにはいいことです。私にとってはひどいことばかり言っています。でもあなたは私のようなことは絶対できなかったでしょう。仕事のやり方は分かっています。そして遂行するやり方も知っています。H1N1 の時もそれから豚熱の時もあなたが1万4000人の人々は亡くなりましたが20万人ではありません。そしてまた景気後退も起こしませんでした。
Far more people.
And by the way, his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up, he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't trust Dr. Johnson, Pfizer.
By the way, gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those are your two words. But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing, because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer, I've spoken to all the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if it's the left, I don't know what it is.
Your Operation Warp Speed, Dr.
I disagree with him. No, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available.
He said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after that. Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be delivering.
This is the same man.
It's all set up.
By Easter, this will be gone away. By the warm weather, it will be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm. That would take care of it.
This is sarcastic.
That was
I would have said sarcastic.
So here's the deal. This man is talking about vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I want to
soon.
pick up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked. You pointed out he puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying
Everybody knows.
Senator Harris is saying you can't trust the science.
Well, no, you can't trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by the way,
To the scientists that are in charge,
the way,
they will have the vaccine very soon.
do you believe for a moment what he's telling you, in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue related to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you that. He's on record as saying he panicked before he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President,
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done
Let's have
nothing.
this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe. If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again. It's
we're going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment.
It's going up fast.
Okay. When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopening. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and school. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide them
Nancy
Pelosi.
いくつか質問したいと思います。まず経済活動
And
の再開。
by the
バイデ
way,
ンさんは
Nancy
経
Pelosi
済
and
活動の再
Schumer, they
開、
have a plan.
学校の再開
He
に関し
won't
て消
even
極
meet
的なのは
with
なぜですか
them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. He sits in his golf courses. I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopening and the fact
He wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we did a great job shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1
They
second.
have a plan.
He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer, and in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning the efficacy of masks?
I have a mask right here. I'll put a mask on when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear a mask.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear a mask like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from me, and he shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say,
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
The way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks and social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
and they've also said the opposite. They've also said
No serious person said the opposite.
No
serious
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
I want to ask you, we got a minute left in this.
Masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir. Agree. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
Nobody will show up.
people with masks.
Nobody shows up to his rallies.
In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
Are you not worried about it?
as a president, and I'll have 25, 35,000 people show up at airports.
Are you not worried about
people? Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. When we do them outside, we have tremendous crowds, as you see, I mean, and literally on 24 hours' notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? A reporter came up to him, asked him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing one.
We've had no negative effects.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effects. And we've had 35, 40,000 people.
You want to just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing, people wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
And he's a fool.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody can.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy? The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown in the second quarter. The unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now. Instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down. He will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people between drugs and alcohol, depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. We saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look at these governors are under siege. cities,
They don't wanna open it.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others. You got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce. Look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well and setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him, during the COVID crisis, has done very well. Billionaires have made under $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how will you do? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no. Sir, it's just yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who have been putting themselves in a way to make sure that we could all try to make it. The idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America, and he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the Americans? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis, and he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why are schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. We ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
Your time is up, sir. We are going to get to the...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools. People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it.
All right.
People of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know,
Gentlemen, we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million last year. I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to do, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a very, I built a
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
Let me tell you.
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President, I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017.
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So not
Millions of
750.
dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just, Chris, let me just say something. It was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business person. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build the building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes. Is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your guys.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis been on by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan creates 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth. That would be about buying America. We have to, we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
Well, by the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It should be 21%. You have 91 companies, federal, in the Fortune 500, who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars. Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax code.
And you know what happened?
You got
our economy boomed. Never boomed.
The economy,
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, we talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do was turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you have to become president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherit
の経済回復だったん
the
ですよ。
worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it. He blew it. He blew it.
半分ぐらいの会社がもうなくなってしまうでしょう。
Wait. Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole. Number two. Number three.
They said it would take. No, you're number two.
経済ブームだと言いますが、
They
彼は
said it
それ
would
を
take a
起こしたので
miracle
す。
to bring back
公共の中ではありま
manufacturing.
せん。
I
29
brought
年
back
以外最も
700,000
ペース
jobs.
の会社
They
だったん
brought
です。
back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Standard
失業
fare.
率は記録的に下がったんです。それは良くないです。
なぜかというと、
We brought
新
back,
型コ
I
ロ
was
ナの
asked to
前
bring
でも
back
製
Chrysler
造
and
業
General
は
Motors. Brought them back
交
right here in
代
the
を
state
始
of
めていま
Ohio
し
and
た。そし
Michigan.
て
He
第
blew it.
They
They're
would
gone.
take- no,
He
you're
blew
number
it.
two.
And in fact, they're going
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies
私は
came in
700
from
人分の
Germany,
会
from
を
Japan, went to
戻
Michigan,
しました、アメリカに。
They're not having
and they
it.
でも
didn't come
奇跡でも行われなければ、
And so
自動
take a
車
look
業
at
界
what
業
he's
界を
actually
立て直
done.
したのは
He's
私です。
done very little.
クライ
His
スラー
trade
や
deals are the same
GM が
way.
オハイオ、
He
ミ
talks
シガ
about
ンに
these
立ち
great
直った
trade
のは
deals.
私
You
の
know,
お
he
かげ
talks
であっ
about
て、
the
そ
art
れを
of the
台無
deal.
しにしたのは
China's
トランプです。
perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China
昨
now
年
than
は
we did before. We have
大
the
量
highest
として
deficit
本
trade
当に
deficit
貧乏ではあ
with
りません。
Mexico.
All right, gentlemen,
in
China
China
ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out he takes out billions of dollars, takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
大統領の下、アメリカは弱くなりました。やめる国となり、貧しくなり、分断され、暴力が増えました。私が副大統領だった時、私たちは傾向体を引き継ぎました。それを
大統領に選ばれるべきでしょうか。2分間どうぞ。
政権のもと、アメリカは弱体視、しかし、さらに分断されてきました。暴力的にもなっています。
Your son got $3.5 million.
大統領時代
Wait a minute, Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question. Go ahead,
Back
sir.
30 seconds.
Yes, you may have.
Thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Beau. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
He made a fortune.
My son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally,
President Trump, we've already been
totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about
I think
true.
It's a
Gentlemen, that report is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change? And what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting for a lot of people.
You believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this planet?
I think a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if that were if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
But, sir,
that's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars and trucks?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Right. Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is the guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down
Go for a
buildings
minute, and then you can go.
and rebuild the building.
No,
It's the
that is
dumbest,
not-
most
that
ridiculous,
is not
where
the case.
airplanes are out of
minute, sir.
business,
That's
where two-car systems are out, where they
Not
want to
true.
take out the cows, too.
Not
That's not
true.
true either, right?
Not
this is
true.
this is a 100
Simply,
trillion.
look,
That's more money than our
is-
country could make in
that is
100
simply
years if we're
not
going.
the case.
All right, let
It
me,
will destroy our
because I
country.
actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100
They-
billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives to people for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that
That's
at all.
he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up a lot of things.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen,
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion,
That is
not
not
$20
my
billion.
plan.
That's
the Green
well,
New
you want to
Deal
rebuild every
is
building.
not my plan.
You want to rebuild
All right.
every.
You
If he knew
have to-
anything
wait, no,
about,
no, wait.
if he knew
Gentlemen,
He
anything
made a
about,
statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
What
not
he
true.
did
Sir,
is he
you're done in
said
this segment.
he called
Mr.
the
Vice-
military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid
Please,
bastards. He
sir,
said it.
stop.
I would never
I
say
would
that
play
to the
it.
military.
Play it.
Go ahead. Mr.
You're on
Vice
tape.
President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your
the
environmental
Green New
changes
Deal-
will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a
You
big
let-
statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just
Biden-
lost the radical left.
I
Oh,
support
you
the
don't.
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change, or are you going to get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it, too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching. In by November 10th. November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
they
are you
throw
going to do
them out
about it?
left
There
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do
What
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go and vote. You go and vote.
But
like
what I'm
they,
saying is, what are
like
you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people?
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country.
There is no.
This is not.
There is no.
This is not going to end well.
There is
Okay.
no
This
evidence
is
of that.
not going
Vice
to
President
end well.
Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement
no,
like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court, with a Justice Barrett, will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this, because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots,
gentlemen, I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been
so
fraud.
now
mail service delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. The final question is: in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by 8 states from even beginning to